When you face death, I think you come to terms with your own mortality and quickly decide which way you want to live the rest of your life. For me, I feel like being in remission, I have been given a second chance. So I take those relationships that I have really seriously and try to nurture them where I can.
Welcome to Beyond the Count. I'm founder and CEO of ITP Australia and New Zealand and your host, Danielle Boyle. This is a space created for the ITP community by the ITP community, where we share real stories, expert insights, and everything in between. Whether you're living with immune thrombocytopenia, supporting someone who is, or just curious about what life looks like beyond the bruises and the blood tests, you're in the right place. So whether you're driving, out for a walk, folding the laundry, or just sitting back and tuning in, let's dive in and go beyond the count. In this episode of Beyond the Count, I'm joined by Stassi Austin, who was diagnosed with ITP at just 13 years of age. We talk about what it's like growing up with a rare and invisible condition, from the early confusion and isolation to learning how to speak up and find confidence. Stassi shares how ITP shaped her teenage years and what has helped her manage life as a young adult. She also reflects on why connection, advocacy, and being prepared can help others feel less alone. Let's get into it. Thanks, Stassi, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we're going to get straight into it with the first question. Can you take us back to when you were first diagnosed and what was it like for you as a teenager?
Yeah, it's been a little while now, almost a decade that I've been living with ITP. So I was first diagnosed at 13 years of age. Pretty active kid, doing lots of kid things, I guess. Learning to be a kid and a teenager in this really crazy world. ITP kind of came out of nowhere. The first symptom was probably fatigue, without realising that it was fatigue. Being an active kid and running around outside with my siblings all the time, you kind of stop wanting to do that and start to be spending more time inside, which was a little bit odd, but we kind of all blamed it on puberty and growing up and maybe changing bodies and things like that. But then it definitely escalated with petechiae, bruises everywhere, lots of bleeding, and going from there.
Were there any particular other impacts with when it came to school or your self-confidence, especially at 13? It's such a prime time and prime period of somebody's life.
It really is. I was fortunate enough that I was homeschooled, so I didn't have the pressure of school and all of the potential bullying that could have come from it, being different at that age in life. And being homeschooled allowed me to rest a little bit more. I didn't have to stick to a really rigid structure for my day. If I was feeling a bit tired in the morning, I could take some extra time and make up for it in the evening. So that was quite helpful. But yeah, learning to live in a body that was actively shutting down when you're trying to find your legs in this world and grow, it was really difficult.
Were there any other, I suppose, elements, throughout those really prominent years that, looking back now that you sort of go, just, wow, I went through that?
I think anyone living with a rare disease is kind of shocked by how much they go through and how resilient they are. To us, this seems to be and is everyday life. We just get up and do things. We live in broken bodies and make adaptations as we go throughout life. And I don't think we often take stock and realise how resilient we are, particularly being diagnosed at 13 when you don't have a blueprint for how to navigate the world. And trying to advocate for yourself, particularly in medical rooms, is quite hard, but learning language about the disease really helped to equip me to be able to stand up for myself and help me advocate for what treatments I wanted and how to navigate particularly the early stages of being diagnosed.
Wow, that sounds like a lot to be, put on somebody's shoulders at such a young age. I suppose you you were quite isolated around that time too, right? You didn't know anyone else with ITP, or did you know anyone else with ITP? Were there any support networks at that time?
I am in a bit of a unique situation because my mum actually has ITP, and growing up, we're a pretty open family. So we always talked about ITP and the symptoms of what came from it, particularly to help mum whenever she was going through a flare. So we always had the language for, what bruises were, what petechiae was, and really what ITP even stood for, which most people don't know when they are diagnosed with it. So being surrounded by that and growing up in that kind of family did help when I was first diagnosed, because it took away the scary aspects of the unknown. We already had the language. We knew people to contact. We knew that it was going to be a really tough ride going through it, but being equipped with the knowledge first was a really crucial step.
And how did your siblings take it? Do you want to go there or not really?
I'm trying to remember because it was so long ago.
Yeah.
Being the eldest of 5, I was definitely the mother hen of my sibling group. And because we were homeschooled, being together all the time, I was always bossing everyone around and telling them what to do, even if I didn't mean to. They are all younger than I am. So seeing someone who they looked up to was definitely tough. I remember being in hospital after being diagnosed straight away, and everybody being in tears, and there was lots of crying happening, and we were all really confused by what was going on because I was a healthy kid and this came out of nowhere. And trying to console the other kids while I also have no idea what's going on. But I was really lucky to have a really supportive family at that time too.
That's really supportive. That's really helpful, I suppose, as well, because a lot of us, when we're diagnosed, we don't even know what ITP is. So having that initial foundation must have been a little bit reassuring, if anything. And I know that you've got a really good relationship with your mum. Love your mum to death. Do you think that brought you two together even more?
Oh, 100%. We are so much closer because we have the same disease. We always say that we share the same dark sense of humour that only comes with having a rare disease. But we are so much stronger in our bond together. We didn't have that time in my teenagehood where you have that typical I hate you kind of phase, because life changed so dramatically for me so quickly. When you face death, I think you come to terms with your own mortality and quickly decide which way you want to live the rest of your life. For me, I feel like being in remission, I have been given a second chance at life. So I take those relationships that I have really seriously and try to nurture them where I can.
That's beautiful. There are just no words. That's absolutely beautiful. And I wish that every other patient that experiences ITP had a very similar outlook as well. That glass is half full. Taking the opportunity where you can, I think, and living every moment that you possibly can is, it's a gift.
Absolutely.
Now, when you were 13, newly diagnosed, were you able to disconnect yourself and ITP? Do you have ITP, or did ITP at that time, were you defined by the rare disease?
That's a really great question. I think at the very start, we were always intertwined because it was so new and it was constant and every day. You couldn't escape it at any point. So I think my relationship with ITP has evolved. I would say now more that I am someone who has ITP and I live with ITP rather than ITP has me. But definitely being 13 and being newly diagnosed, it was Stas has ITP. This is really serious.
Were there any particular coping mechanisms that you had, during those formidable years, even into possibly, university. Were there any particular coping mechanisms or strategies that you used?
My coping mechanisms have changed as I have grown up, which I think is completely normal. I am a really big introvert and I don't like spending time with people at all.
There is nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely not. I agree. Being an introvert and being forced to be in hospitals and talking to lots of medical professionals, you get over it quite quickly. So I used to self-isolate quite a lot, wearing headphones and listening to lots of music and audiobooks were a way to kind of self-soothe. I've always found myself in books and TV shows and movies and other characters and being lost in fictional worlds. So that was always a way for me to escape my own body and what was going on inside it. Now, as an adult, I have thrown myself into advocacy in lots of various forms, particularly in the youth sector, but also in the rare disease space, because I think that equips me with better skills than self-isolating all the time and allows me to see what life is like for other people and how I can help them rather than always focusing on me.
I think it's also really important that you do know what you need and what your coping strategies are, because, on the good days and not so good days, you need to know what is going to help you navigate that and get through that. So I think it's quite profound.
Thanks to our sponsor Sobi for their ongoing support of ITP Australia and New Zealand and our podcast Beyond the Count.
How have you learned to cope with the unpredictability of ITP, especially when, plans get interrupted?
I think time has helped me learn to cope with ITP. I think you have to be really comfortable knowing at the start that your plans and your life are going to be forever disrupted by this disease. You can live in remission, as I do now, where life is a little bit more stable, but you always know in the back of your mind that something can happen at any point. You have lots of strategies and doctors and medical teams to help you with that, but knowing innately that something may change, I think that helps you to hold things very lightly as you go forward. I remember being first diagnosed and my auntie was getting married and having a destination wedding in beautiful Fiji, where our family are from. And we were all so excited. We love this auntie of ours, mum's sister, and we're so excited to go overseas and be on a big plane. And as country kids, it's the best thing, being in a big city and being in a big plane. And being diagnosed, the hematologist told us that my platelets were going down so severely that I wouldn't be able to fly. That news was absolutely devastating. I remember crying so much from that. We ended up going to family in another area in Sydney and watching the wedding live FaceTimed because we couldn't get over there. So learning to deal with that disappointment quite early has now put me in good stead as an adult, where you make some wonderful plans with friends or you plan a trip and you have to take time off work where there are some other things involved. And knowing that that might not always happen, I think that's okay.
And considering you are in remission, do you feel or do you think that you still experience, whether it be anxiety or other mental health challenges, that even knowing that you don't actively have ITP, but at some point it may come back?
Absolutely. Dealing with mental health and ill mental health, particularly in relation to ITP, is something that happens on every day for me. I was quite anxious post diagnosis, and that has continued for, up until now. The depression has also come into it a little bit. So dealing with that has been quite challenging because they're different symptoms to anxiety.
Yeah.
Talking to medical professionals has been the best thing I have ever done for that, and putting strategies in place to know that when I am particularly low and have low moods, particularly if it coincides with a random symptom out of here or there. If I see a bruise on my body, I kind of go into that fight or flight mode and get really panicky and really shaky and start to spiral and wonder, oh, is this coming back? What am I going to do? I'm going to have to give up my job, which is crazy. But that's something where my mind immediately goes. But having strategies in place to know, okay, does this bruise hurt? No. Where did it come from? Watch it, we'll monitor it, and then working from that. But yeah, it's something that I don't think will ever leave me, but something I'm actively working on.
Yeah, no, I did hear, I think it was at one of the haematology conferences last year, something along the lines of PTSD for ITP patients. And I think that regardless of you being in remission or not in remission, or actively, going through treatment or actively not treating your ITP, there is a level of PTSD there, regardless of where you are in the cycle or the journey.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting to hear that from another person, that it's not just, I've heard it from a couple of people, but we've never really, I suppose, delved deeper.
Well, I still can't eat jam of any kind because the feeling of it feels like a blood clot in my mouth. And that sends me into so much panic and shock that I actually can't eat it. So that is a massive part of it. Yeah.
Wow. No, so I used to use jam to hide my steroids in. That way I didn't have to taste.
The taste.
Yuck. So what's helped you feel more confident in speaking up about ITP, being part, like a volunteer within ITP Australia and New Zealand, with your friends, work, advocating for people around you?
Growing up in the family that I did and having the basis before I was diagnosed about what ITP was, I think has put me in really good stead for being an advocate now. Knowing how I felt when I was equipped with that knowledge before heading into doctors' offices and consultations was something that helped put my anxiety at ease. So being able to help other people through that now is what motivates me to keep volunteering and to keep pushing for better reforms. And that's why, we all do what we do, I guess.
So very true. Is there anything that you wish you could tell your 13-year-old self, based on all of the information on what you know now, being in remission, and doing some of the excellent things that you're doing right now? What would you tell your 13-year-old self?
Gosh, what a loaded question. There's so many things. We're getting very existential here. I think I would tell my 13-year-old self that you know more than you think you do, and you know your body better than anyone else. Those symptoms that you are feeling, they are actually there and they're not in your head, despite what everyone else is telling you. You are the best person to advocate for yourself, and you need to be able to use your voice because this is really serious. It's not going away, and it will put you in good stead for the future.
Wow, that's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. There's so much to take away from Stassi's story. Here are 3 key things to keep in mind as we wrap up today's episode. Number 1, you know your body best. If something doesn't feel right, pay attention to it. Stassi encourages young people with ITP to trust their symptoms, ask questions, and speak up even when it's hard. Number 2, have a plan for when things change. ITP can interrupt plans at any time. Learning to adjust and having a few go-to strategies like journaling, tracking symptoms, or taking time to reset can help you feel more in control. Number 3, share resources with people around you. Helping friends or family understand ITP can make a big difference. Stassi talks about how her friends printed out some of the ITP ANZ resources to better support her, which helped her feel seen and understood. A big thank you to ITP warrior Stassi for joining us today. If you're looking for support, join the ITP community at itpanz.org.au. While you're online, check out the latest edition of The Count, our quarterly magazine. Read some of the great patient stories we have in our news section. Download a huge range of treatment information, guidelines and more in our patient resources section, and know that you are not alone. We are here to support you. We are here to provide you and inform you with all of the latest information when it comes to immune thrombocytopenia. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others in the ITP community, and don't forget to leave a review on the platform you're listening from. It helps others find Beyond the Count. We've got more expert conversations coming your way really soon, so hit the follow or subscribe button to stay updated. And thanks for tuning in and diving beyond the count with us.